Hello, and welcome to another Cloud Podcast, a podcast designed to bring you stories from the smartest minds in IT, operations, and business, and learn how they're using cloud technology to improve business and the customer experience. All right, well, welcome to another Cloud Podcast with Artie and myself. We are excited to have Jim Kalbach on the call today, on the Zoom meeting, doing this podcast. We're really excited to have you on the show. Jim, how you doing today? How's the weekend?
Yeah, all good over here. Thanks for having me. Really excited about the conversation we're going to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, welcome Jim to the podcast, and tell us a little bit about your title, your unique title, Chief Evangelist. I love that. That's a little bit better than what we've seen in the past. So tell us a little bit about what that title is and what your origin story is over the last couple of years.
Sure. It's not 100% original title. There are other folks who have that title. You can find them out on LinkedIn. Guy Kawasaki, I meant to say, it was kind of the first one that prototyped that. Tech companies have had evangelists before. But my background is in design and innovation. I worked in product teams for a very long time. And 6 years ago, I came to Mural. And when I joined the company, I was actually doing webinars and writing content, and I had this kind of external voice for the company 6 years ago. I was employee number 12, so we were quite small, just trying to get our message out. But then, the 5 or more years after that, I built up our customer success team, our support team, and our education teams and learning teams as well too. So I kind of got away from that more external voice and face of the company. Even though I still continued to do that, I continued to write and speak. That wasn't the core of my job. I was working with our biggest and best customers, trying to set up our customer success team and things like that. And then, when the pandemic hit, it was great for us for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, we believe we have a solution that can help folks. So having a digital whiteboard was a kind of a missing link in a collaboration tool set that allowed a lot of companies to be effective, even though they were all working from home during the pandemic. But there's no question that it was great for our business in return as well too. So we just grew exponentially. Our employees doubled in the last year. We've quadrupled our employees, and the number of customers has grown, and usage has grown, and revenue has grown. So we're a much bigger company now. And as we were kind of recalibrating my position in all of that too, speaking with my CEO, we said, let's go back to the roots and let Jim do what we originally brought him in to do, which was be that external voice, face of the company and that kind of thing. So we came up with this chief evangelist role. And I am in the marketing team, but I don't like to see that role as a traditional marketing role in terms of, top of funnel and just getting as many eyeballs as we can on Mural. I think about it a lot more in terms of depth, the depth of the content, the thought leadership, and the depth of the relationships that I can form with customers and things like that as well too. And there are other people at the company that do that kind of work, but I'm just kind of the center of attention for advocacy for Mural from our side, right? And we also have a big network of partners and experts that work with us as well too. So I can also work, with our employees, our expert network, with our customers, and it's really about deepening, the thought leadership in what we're doing over here.
Yeah, it really is. And, being that we're coming hopefully out of this pandemic, and we've had this last year of so much growth with a lot of tech companies that we've talked to. And I'd like to give Mural a shot, that just highlight what the company does as digital whiteboard, right? Yeah. And I know you've got the green screen behind you. Let's show us a little bit of what it can do, just so for people out there that haven't really seen a digital whiteboard, or how this technology can be used for collaboration, because you're obviously using it internally, but also it's for your clients and your customers. So show us a little bit about how it works, how you guys use it internally, and how customers typically use it.
Right. So a digital whiteboard, describes it quite accurately, but you can think about it like a canvas or a board or a wall that you can access in the cloud. And because it's cloud-based, you can access it from your browser, or we have native apps. So really easy to get into it. And the way that I like to describe the interaction is a lot like Google Maps. So you get this big map and you zoom in and out. So it's not like a document where you have a page, that's kind of static. you get this big surface and you can zoom in and out of it and pan around. And what you can do is you can add, you can add sticky notes. So I just added that sticky note right there. And I can type in here, hello, Alex and Arda in here. And I'm collaborating in the cloud right now. So there other people can collaborate here with me. A lot like Google Docs. If you've ever been in the same Google Doc and you can see people typing at the same time, it's like that, but you're doing it visually, right? So I have these visual elements that I can add. I can even add images, for instance, if I do. Let's see what I have on my desktop right now, real quick. Oh, we can go in here. Yeah, I'll just take this guy here. I can add images in here as well too. So it's not just about it's not just about text and sticky notes. You can actually add images and documents in here as well too. And then once it's in the cloud, folks can collaborate on it together, right? And I have this monitor over here hooked up to it as well too. So I can draw over here and it shows up right there automatically, and that's all through the cloud. So it really allows people to collaborate with that visual context and the visual interaction that you might have from a whiteboard, but you're doing it not only across distance, but through the cloud so that you can have different devices, different modes of input. One person can be on their mobile phone from a Starbucks, the other person's at home, and the other person's in the office with a large touchscreen device. So as we start thinking about going back to the offices, right, we need to be thinking a lot more digital. And Mural we think of it as a missing link, right? You still need Zoom for your audio and your video, or WebEx or whatever you have. You still need Asana for project management, and of course your email and Slack. But when you bring Mural into the picture, you have this really complete set of capabilities to make digital and remote collaboration. It's a different ball game. It allows for a different type of interaction.
And obviously during the pandemic, this has exploded. The need for this has exploded. Yeah. What have you seen on the adoption side of the house? It looks like it's plug and play, pretty easy, but are people having a hard time adopting to this, or is it a pretty easy adoption?
Yeah, I mean, adoption has changed. What used to be a kind of a long nose of adoption, I used to call it, where you'd have a small team at a large company and took them, months and months and sometimes even years to get used to it and before others adopted it. Now it's going a lot quicker. But I like to describe Mural as a tool that's easy to learn, but very difficult to master. So the basic mechanics of Mural, the kind of the zoom in a pan and, moving around, and I can zoom out here. You can see I was playing around earlier today. I'm taking some notes, but the basic mechanics. Okay. And, even this experience here where I can draw real quickly. And by the way, we have handwriting recognition, so I can convert that to actual type text and things like that. That's all real easy. The hard part is how that changes how teams collaborate, how facilitators have to think about workshops. And then also, combine this with an audio and a video experience. So now you're driving Zoom at the same time, getting all of that to work together, and then taking your methods and recasting them for this new digital world. That's the hard part. So Zoom, I mean, Mural opens up a lot of possibilities as a tool, and it's easy to get into the tool itself. It's the impact of the tool that is really hard to master.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because in so many of these SaaS companies, in the cloud companies that we talk to, a lot of it is user adoption, right? Yeah. And they're being able to look internally at the data and see, oh, okay, they're in the platform X amount of time, they're out of the platform in 5 minutes. We need to get them in there longer. How are you using like the data that's available to you at Mural to see, okay, like this is going well or this is not going well based off how users are in the platform?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of software is designed for one person to use. So if you think of Microsoft Word or your email program or your calendar, Mural is a collaborative tool, though. The benefit of it is that we can have a conversation. So when we look at adoption, one person going into Mural, that can be beneficial for them. And I've done a lot of my own kind of, I plan out my day and that kind of thing. but it's really when there's two or more people together.
Mhm.
So when we're looking at adoption, we're looking at, very often we use the team as the unit of analysis and not necessarily individual people. Because if we have a dozen people
Right.
and they all access it and they're using it all the time, that's very, very different than 12 people using it at the same time,
Mhm.
right? So we want to look at teams. So there's in our space, there's that extra complexity of adoption of, first the individual has to get it, quote unquote, and then the team has to, quote unquote, get it as well too. And that's really where you get the aha moment, but that's really what we're looking at for adoption is the team adopting, right? The other thing that's complicated about our space too is because it's a blank canvas, it's literally a blank canvas and I can put anything I want on it here too. The number of use cases is exponential. It's like, what can you use Mural for? And my answer is yes. Right? Basically, you can think about anything that you jot down on a piece of paper, on a sticky note, on a flip chart, on a whiteboard and beyond, any of that and all of that and more you can do inside of Mural as well too. So it's really thinking about obviously brainstorming, design thinking, design sessions, but everything from agile, all the agile rituals, lean, but now we're starting to see like strategists and business development doing things like the business model canvas inside of Mural, right? For which we actually have a template for that. So, it's like, okay, we want to reinvent our business model. How do you do that? Well, I can pull out this canvas right here and get started with the business model. Design right here. So I got the business model canvas now here behind me, right? So now we're starting to see executives and HR teams and IT operation teams and sales teams using Mural to map out their accounts and things like that. So the number of use cases is the next thing. So I get an individual to use Mural. I get a team to use Mural for one thing. Is like, okay, now how does that team use it for 5 things or 10 things, right? And extend their use cases. So there's loops of adoption that we monitor and we look at it kind of in stages or in different ways.
Yeah, it seems like you have a lot of different industries that can use this. Have you seen a specific industry that leans towards this? Is this or is it not even an industry? Maybe it's a department within an industry. So like high tech, I could see product teams really using this, but also maybe higher education and online courses to get your degree like that. It could be used for education as well. What are your kind of core groups, and then what does it work best with?
Sure. So we have a couple of core target areas. I don't know if arenas, you might not call them industries. I guess they are roughly, but software and tech companies is one. Financial service institutions, which very often have a software team kind of internal. And we're often working with those teams. But then also consulting is another group of people that we look at. We recently, in the past year, we ramped up our education team. So we actually have an education and nonprofit team as well too, because we do see a lot of universities using Mural as well too. And then within those groups, the types of teams that tend to need Mural the most and gravitate towards it tend to be more creative teams. So design, innovation, even things like business development, anything that's kind of front end of the business cycle, the fuzzy front end of the business cycle. Those teams tend to gravitate towards Mural more or quicker, let's say. But it doesn't exclude things like I mentioned, sales teams or customer success teams as well too, that are go-to-market, more go-to-market facing as well too. But it tends to be those design, creative teams, innovation teams, lean. If you think about running a lean project, but then also education is another big one. Instruction, just in general, doesn't have to be like an educational institution. Learning and development team. We have a lot of learning and development teams that are using Mural as a delivery platform for education inside of companies, but also education institutions.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you talked about, this user adoption and having use cases. And as they grow, it's almost like your customer experience team, your CSMs are probably one of the most important parts is how do we get these clients to use it in different ways and more unique ways, right? To really get them ingrained and really, which will completely drop the churn, right? Where people are like, well, we only use it for one thing and we're kind of tired of it and get rid of it. But the deeper that your CSMs can show like, hey, here's how another customer uses it. Here's how someone else is using it. How do you kind of map that journey as far as like implementation to, getting them just rocking and rolling on the platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of, I think you characterized it correctly, but because of the fact that we're a blank canvas and you can do n number of things with Mural, and because we can speak to so many different types of teams in different organizations, that conversation, particularly from a customer success standpoint, has to be a little bit customized.
Mhm.
Right, that the way that you approach one company is going to be different than another company, because we're not a workflow tool. We can't say, oh, you do these 5 things and
Right.
you're successful, or it's sticky, right? It's always going to be a little bit of negotiation of the type of team, the type of company, and then also where they come in. They might come in with a really small team at first, right?
Right.
And you have to grow, but they also might just buy a bunch of memberships up front as well too. So that's all going to kind of affect the playbook from a customer success standpoint.
To me, that presents a decent challenge for you and your team, because it's harder to scale when you can't just cookie cutter the
Correct.
implementation, right? Because if every client is so unique,
Correct.
there has to be more of a broader, I imagine, a broader approach, and then helping them just brainstorm. And is that kind of how it works with your team?
Exactly. Yeah, I think you need to think about, there are common things across all of those industries and teams that I talked about, and it's looking at those things in a less context bound way. For instance, like running a workshop, like everybody runs workshops and meetings, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, how do we talk about that so that you can approach anybody and still have a great play around workshops and meetings? The topic and the length and who's running it might change from customer to customer, but understanding, for instance, facilitating workshops. And that's why we wrote a book a couple of years ago called Facilitating Remote Workshops, because that was kind of a thing that underlied a lot of what Mural use was and still is facilitating remote workshops, right?
Let's talk a little bit about your customers. So after you get them through the adoption phase, implementation, maybe something comes up, they need some sort of support, or they have a feature request, or whatever that is. Since they have this tool, how do they communicate with you guys? Do you guys create a community? Do you guys have a whiteboard where everyone just jumps and puts stuff in, and then you guys all collaborate on a weekly or monthly basis? Or is it still traditional channels like phone, chat, and email to get support?
It's a lot of traditional channels, a lot of phone, chat, email. But we do try to use our own solution in those conversations, and that's a differentiator for us. And by the way, we've also seen with our consultants that that's a differentiator for them, particularly during the pandemic, that their customers, when you're consulting with a client and you bring Mural into the conversation, during the pandemic, for instance, that was an aha moment that elevated your status as a consultant just right then and there, just from being able to do some of this type of stuff. So we do try to do, for instance, a customer success play we have around like an account kickoff and account mapping together with the client. We do that in Mural, in a canvas, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's in there, which not only allows you to capture the information in a very dynamic way, but it also allows us to demo the tool like right then and there, because they'll say, hey, how did you do that? Okay, let me show you how I did that, right? So we're in the tool, having a conversation about the tool, but then able to show and talk about the tool, because that's what we're using as well too. But also because it's cloud, then the next time you have that call, you have that continuity of the conversation, because where you left off is right then and it's right there. So Mural is cloud-based and everything is automatically saved to the cloud. So anytime you add a sticky note, like if I double click here and I just add the sticky note, that's in the cloud immediately, right? And it's available for anybody else to interact with, right? So that's why when I go, you can see me drawing in the cloud. I drew over here on a different account that went to the cloud and then got displayed over here, right? So you have that almost instant cloud-based collaboration. That allows you to start and stop conversations. You just close your laptop and you open it back up and the conversation just continues right there, which is, I think, going to be really important when we go back to the office and people are talking about hybrid collaboration, right? And they're talking about what devices do I need? How should I reconfigure my office? And I think as space it gets reconfigured and location where I'm collaborating from doesn't matter anymore. And also time shifts around, I think the constant is going to be digital collaboration, right? So you used to think about project rooms or war rooms, right? You can think about Mural like your digital war room, but you close your laptop, you open it back up, you close it again, you open it back up, and you just continue your conversation, right? You don't have to take photos of whiteboards. You don't have to transcribe sticky notes, right? Because as soon as you pin something to the wall in an office, that, you know, piece of paper, it locks out anybody who's not in the office. You're locked out of that information, right? So I think we have to kind of rethink not only our programs and our habits, but also our space, our physical spaces around us. And Mural becomes a proxy for the project room.
Yeah, and you called something out that reminded me of a time when I worked for a company that was pre-IPO, and we actually hired an admin to go around, and it was every 30 minutes on the 30 minutes to every whiteboard and clear the whiteboard off, because some of the stuff was, you know, SOX compliance and like all these like financial numbers, and to have a visitor come in and see that or take a picture could be detrimental. So to have this in the cloud, have it user-based and permission-based is really amazing. And, you know, you don't have to erase all that valuable information.
I love this one. You ever see a whiteboard with that written on it?
Oh, totally.
No, it's way too many times.
What's this all about? If this is important information, it shouldn't be in danger of the cleaning crew erasing it. You know, this is 2021. You know, the fidelity of information needs to be greater, I think, right? And with Mural, not only do I have all that portability and shareability, but there's a certain permanence, you know, from and continuity from one location and one team to the next. But there's also a higher fidelity of information, because I can add, like I said, I can add links, images, documents. So I can actually bring things together. It's not just my scribbles with my pen. It's digital information that I can bring in as well too, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I imagine with project management, it's just, you know, it's game changing when you can bring in all those different aspects, right? Pictures, files. I can see, you know, hundreds of use cases just in many industries like construction and all those types of things. To shift gears a little bit and to kind of focus a little bit on more like on your, you know, the customer experience and how you lead your team. Like how we mentioned before that, you know, collaborating with your team, showing leadership through, you know, making sense of the qualities that each person has. How do you approach leadership just in general with your team and other departments that you collaborate with?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that we're working through in conversations with our customers, because they're thinking about that as well too. And just to be clear, I don't lead any teams anymore. So when I moved to this role about 6 months ago, chief evangelist role, I gave up all my reports. So I don't have anybody that reports to me anymore. But I had a team of about 35 people for the past 5 years, or I built a team of 35 people for the past 5 years. And I think leadership does need to change. That was a worldwide team that I formed completely remote from the beginning.
Wow.
So by the way, when the pandemic hit, as a company, Mural kind of slid into the work from home setting fairly easily. It came very natural to us, I think. And then, like I said, my old team, we were remote anyway. So that was just business as normal for most of us. But it brings up a question. It brings up questions about leadership and styles of leadership and things like that. But I think for me, the big key word is trust. That you know, I had people in Europe and I had people in California. I'm here outside of New York City. You can see work happening in Slack, and there's this digital peripheral vision. That's what I call it. That as a leader, I had a digital peripheral vision that you can see work happening, but it's not like walking around the office and, you know, you didn't see people typing on their computers, but you can see stuff happening, and you have to be sensitive to that, first of all, to see activity, but you also have to have a lot of trust. You have to have a lot of trust in your team. You have to, as a manager, you have to give a lot of trust. Right. And I found that the more trust you get, the more you get back as well too. But just the mindset of leaders, I think, has fundamentally changed because of the pandemic in terms of how they're managing these days. And things like trust, things like inclusion of voices, diversity, empathy, humility. These are all things that I think that, you know, modern leaders have to grapple with.
Yeah, and we mentioned, like, when we spoke before about, there's no more of this command and control mindset, right? In the military, absolutely makes sense. We're talking life and death. But then the other thing that you partly kind of transition that into was you're a leader amongst other leaders.
Right. Oh,
And
totally.
so I thought that it resonated with me, because that's a really unique way to look at it and like have a unique perspective on that leadership role.
Yeah, I mean, and when I was hiring people, I said, I need a partner. I need a strong partner in Europe. I need a strong partner on the West Coast. So I always thought it as, I was a leader amongst equal, and we were working together as a team. But it actually led me to draw a different org chart. I once had an org chart that looked more like this. I think I was in the center, and I was basically saying, "Oh, I'm the button that holds it down." But this was team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4, whatever, and they overlapped with other teams. But I didn't want to draw a hierarchy, right? I didn't want to show all the hierarchy, or even me above it. So very often I'd write myself out to the side over here, or something like that. I put myself on the side, or like in this bubble diagram that I had for my org chart, I put myself just as a key in the middle, but not necessarily higher or lower. So and that's a little bit of a gimmick, over here. This is a little bit of a gimmick, but it reflects them. I think we have to think about organizations and hierarchy in a different way as well too. And then when you couple this with a new attitude towards trust, a new attitude towards diversity and inclusion as well too. I think those are the harder topics. And it kind of goes back to my point before when I said, Mural is simple to learn, but tough to master. I think, remote and distributed collaboration, or hybrid, or whatever the new world's going to be, it's actually kind of easy to learn. But it's the mastering part that's hard, right? Because of all the much deeper changes that that levies on organizations. Leadership is different. Management is different. Hiring, talent, attraction, and retention becomes a different thing. Performance and performance reviews become different. I just read an article on the weekend that said people who are on site, so at headquarters or actually physically in the office, get more bonuses than people who are remote, right? So there's this real potential for what I call unintended hierarchies. That you have your org chart and your hierarchies, but then there's this overlay of a phantom power hierarchy on top of that as well too, which now that we're collaborating in all different ways, remote, in-person, mobile, across continents and time zones, you want to be kind of aware of these unintended hierarchies that could come up as well too. But basically, leadership is in question in my view. Management is in question in this new world of collaborating that we're in.
Yeah, you hit on some really good points here with trust and communication and in office. And back at one of my original companies that I worked for, I oversaw a tech support team of about 300 people. And we had found, and we did a heat map based off of performance, that certain pockets of areas on the physical floor were performing higher than others, and trying to figure out why that was. And it was because they were the team members around the leaders, like physically next to the leaders, which built two things. One was they're constantly communicating with their leader. If you ever have an issue, you just turn to your left or your right and say, hey, how do you do this thing again? Right. So there's constant communication. And then the other thing is the leaders can trust the people around them the most because they can physically see the work and the productivity. So as we migrate into this like futuristic collaborative work from home environment, the better that we can communicate, or using tools like yours to help communicate, can build that trust. So without that, it's really hard for us to know, like, is my employee doing X, Y, and Z? Because maybe I don't see the digital workspace that they're working on in and out of every single day. And then we have to set up touch bases, and then we have to set up performance reviews and all these like meetings just to have meetings. And it's not really a elaborate use of time. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about, is there a next phase of your product? Like what is the next phase? And if so, is it just building out more features so that it can be the go-to place for everything? Or are you guys going to go down a certain path and use it to, help some sort of larger mission or vision?
Yeah, Sure. I mean, I like to see it in kind of two halves or two sides of the same coin. The one is the software, and we are a software company. That's our roots. We're firmly grounded in software. Our business model and pricing is around, SaaS software sales and that kind of thing. So we will continue to develop the software. In fact, the exponential growth that I mentioned in our employee base, a lot of that is programming and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the way that we're doing that's unique. And we're really focused on what we call facilitation features. So we have a lot of features in the product that aren't just about getting content out, but also then managing the conversation on top of the content. So we have a voting feature. We have a private mode feature that allows you to kind of anonymously add. There's a timer there. You can make comments. You can follow people. We even have some fun things, like we have the celebrate feature. So you can have confetti come across your board. I can give a thumbs up. And let's see if that came up there. Let me get one of these thumbs up. Oh, I'm in the way. Yeah, that's why.
There you go.
Yeah, there's a thumbs up feature, which is interesting. When you talk about your proximity issue, which is great example, Art. Having a tool like Mural is a missing link, but it also gives people an additional way to express themselves that they might not have otherwise had, right? So imagine now the folks who are in person and physically close to that leader, they're able to see each other's eyes and have that face-to-face communication. Mm-hmm. But remote folks can do something like floating this. I can't quite see it here. In the canvas, you can put the thumbs up as well too, or I can add my thoughts on canvas, in a sticky note,
Mm-hmm.
and I can be contributing here. And what we see with Mural is actually sometimes an inversion of contribution, where in a physical room, the person that folded their arms and sat in the back of the room never spoke. In Mural, they're very vocal as well too. So it's a way to have a level playing field, right? And the facilitation features, talking about the software, I think help facilitate those conversations and let people have a voice, right? The other side of the coin, though, is outside of the product. And this is where this goes back to my role as chief evangelist and a lot of the work that I did with the customer success and support teams as well, too. And is that, Mural is software and you have to get it installed and pay for it and learn the software as well, too. But there's a whole nother set of skills that you need to have in order to facilitate around methods, around visualizing work, and then all of the conversations that you want to structure, because Mural allows you to structure conversations. So we also have experts. We have experts on staff. We have customer success folks who are experts. We have expert facilitators and trainers. And then we also have partners as well, too. So we see, in addition to our software, we also see an ecosystem of collaboration and facilitation that we can offer to our customers outside of the software through human capital. And we're looking at features right now, for instance, called Experts on Demand, where you can get in contact with us, and we'll set you up with an expert who can help you facilitate or create a canvas or whatever that is outside of the software as well, too. So I think both the software, you're going to see that developing very rapidly and with more features and particular collaboration features. But I think outside of the software is where it's even more interesting.
Yeah, I like the idea of like having that ability to bring in an expert, right? And I think that's all part of the the customer journey and how to bring more value to them. I want to touch on the actually, I might parlay a little bit into the mapping experiences, which is the book you wrote about that, and how does that play into that the idea that we have our customers and try to give them those experts and try to make that experience really high touch and boutique feeling. Talk a little bit about the mapping experiences in the book and how that kind of parlays into your job today.
Sure. One of the key points that I make in the book, it's called Mapping Experiences, is that expressing a complex problem like customer experience, like what is a customer experience, right? It's hard to even define the word experience. But if you create a map of it, then a team can rally around that. So it becomes an artifact that gets alignment. And I would argue that the visual nature of experience mapping is also a critical part of that. Because I could go out and do research and talk to 36 customers or whatever you need to do the research and write a 50-page report about it, right? But that doesn't have the same impact as mapping it out visually, because once you map it out visually, you have a compact and a compelling artifact that people can approach. So it's approachable. It also sparks conversations. It allows you to see cause and effect all in one area. So I talk about a lot of that in the book as a map as a conversation starter. It's a catalyst for a conversation, right? And it's that visual alignment. You can see, first of all, you can see in the diagram how you align the outside to the inside, but then also the team gets aligned as well too. So there's kind of two levels of alignment, and that's really, really important to have that visual aspect. And I think that's what Mural then brings to any conversation, right, is that alignment through a shared visual artifact as well.
Yeah, I know we're coming close to time here. We usually like to end with a specific question. It's a little bit more whimsical, but I'll ask you maybe a different question, because I love this technology. It's probably one of the most technical, advanced podcasts we've had. So this is amazing. I think my question is, as you know, most of your customers and client base, what is one of the funnest or most whimsical way that someone's used your product? Is there a story behind it? And, is it something kind of interesting other than it just being a mundane meeting or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of personal uses. We've heard tons of stories, people planning the wedding. I used Mural to plan my house move. And, I redecorated my house on a floor plan in Mural. And, it was great because it was very participatory. My wife can do it, very easily. Like you don't have to know Photoshop or AutoCAD or whatever to kind of play around there. So there's lots of stories like that. Vacations, planning a vacation. But one thing that we recommend here at Mural is to take time to connect as humans. We found during the pandemic, I do a survey every year on remote collaboration. We found during the pandemic, the #1 frustration with working in remote teams is missing the social and the personal contact with your colleagues, right? So what we like to talk about is, in addition to the yearly retreats or the big all hands events, which are great, and you continue to do those, but on a regular basis, like on a meeting by meeting basis, what's the smallest thing that you can do to connect as a human being in an ongoing kind of way? And we like to think a lot about warm-ups and debriefs and ways that you can be fun and creative, just as a matter of course of your workday. We have this one exercise. I have it over here. We call it, let me see if I can pull this out. We call it Pick Your Nick. I'll just pull it out here onto the canvas behind me, and I'll set it up for you guys real quick. But basically, sorry, I got to extend the canvas a little bit. It's a really simple exercise. There you go. Basically, you come in here and you pick a color. So imagine you're on a Zoom call. So I have the audio and the video like this, and then everybody has access to the canvas as well too. You come in here and you put your name on a sticky note. That can also be your color for the rest of the meeting, by the way, if you need to color code the rest of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then in step 2, you grab that and you come down here and you've got some Nicolas Cage characters. So by way of Nicolas Cage characters, you just let everybody know how you're feeling today. Right. And so I might even put my chip on two squares, so to speak. Right. And then once the whole team does that, what you can do is, rather than going around one by one and saying hello and how you feel, you go around emotion by emotion. Right. So, and, you got a couple people who are unhappy. Oh, they just launched a project. Right. So that adds a little bit of context as well, too. But then, the bees is a popular one, by the way, when we do this. A lot of people feel like bees these days. But that allows you to have a brief conversation, Alex, why do you feel like bees today? Right. And you're like, oh, I just have so much. And that allows me to have empathy with you as well, too. Right. The important thing, so I think you can connect as humans and socially in this remote context with something as simple as Pick Your Nick. But here's the thing, it's not just a gimmick and it's not just a novelty. It actually makes for a better meeting later on. right? People have their webcams on, they're talking, they're moving around in the mural. They've just declared how they felt. So they're a little bit more vulnerable, which adds psychological safety to the group, right? Now they're all a little bit more willing to share when you get to the tough problems later on, and you actually get better results. So if I had an hour-long meeting and I took 3 minutes, it only takes 3 minutes to do pick your nick, right? If I took 3 minutes at the top of the meeting to do pick your nick, you're going to have a better meeting. And guess what? When people say, what's the thing that frustrates them most about remote collaboration? Maybe it won't be social, right? Because you got a little bit of social aspect in here as well too.
I love it too. And then you lead the meeting with it, and then people will be on time because they don't want to miss that part, because that's the social piece. Like, you know,
right, exactly.
they want to collaborate and hang out with their friends. So very cool, very awesome.
I love the carefree nick. I believe that's from Con Air.
Right. Yeah. These are all movies, right? Yeah. This is, I think, Raising Arizona over here. That's Con Air. I never saw the Bees movie, but then I saw a video clip of it, and it just seemed ridiculous. So I wanted to
it's good to add.
Bees actually were. Yeah. So that's it. But we also have variations of this as well too. So we have a montage of cat photos, and so you can make this, you know, your own. And that's actually what we recommend as well too, is try some things out that work for you and that work for your team and for your culture, and what really works. But again, you know, 3-minute little thing like this at the beginning has a lot of practical aspects to it, gets people talking and their cameras are on and they are used to the tool, but it also opens people up socially so that you get better results from your meetings as well too.
Absolutely. I think that's so great. And it's these little nuggets of, you know, ideas and what other people are doing, which is so valuable because it's changed so much over the last year. I think people are hungry for, how do we engage our team when they're remote? You know, when we go back to that hybrid model, like people that are in the office have a better, you know, chance of being able to network with their higher ups, which is, you know, so it's gonna be a fine balance to see like how that all plays out.
Agree.
But Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I'm really glad we were able to show us how the platform works, because I think for customer experience and customer support and all those things that we talk about on this podcast, this is a big piece of it, and being able to use that to accomplish some of these goals around customer experience is really cool. So I appreciate you coming on. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's always happy to talk about any of these topics and related topics. Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks, Jim, again for joining us on the episode today. And I'm going to be posting a link to your book at the bottom. So everyone who's watching on the podcast, feel free to click that link. Very informative, very cool, very collaborative. I love it. You know, Alex and I might have to buy one of these spaces and start using it for our podcast.
Let me know if you do. Thanks, Arda and Alex. Thanks for having me on the show.
You got it. Thanks, Jim. Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to join us next week as we bring another guest in to talk about the trends around cloud contact center and customer experience. Also, you can find us at adleradvisors.com, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week on another Cloud Podcast.